Just the last one.
It's great.
Yeah, everybody's a kid.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good news and bad news. The bad news is, the mayor, had an emergency. I don't think there's any good news because I'm gonna sub for her, so it's either gonna be the smoothest meeting in the world or the rockiest. But the one thing I can promise you is I keep track of times. Hopefully we can move this along relatively quickly. Most everyone here knows the drill. We have several PIP amendments and some other action items to take care of, but the staff does a great job and there's really no need for us to worry about any of that. But meeting minutes from September 7th or
Pleasant do some introductions for the.
can we do the minutes first? Then we'll do the introduction.
Oh, we can, do the chair.
By the way, she told me 3 minutes before.
I only found out 5 minutes before the mayor was in.
Anyway,
Absolutely approve the minutes, sir.
thank
I'll
you.
make a
All right, so
motion.
that was easy.
Yeah.
That was a
Right.
motion. Second.
I'll
Second. By Mark, all those in favor, it's unanimous. So without further ado, since most of us don't know each other, we'll go right to left. I'm Carm Bazell, I work at CDTA.
Mike Arthur, DOT Regional Director, Capital District.
Sandy Misowitz, Capital Region Transportation Council.
Tom Warner representing Saratoga County.
Mark Castiglione, CDRPC.
Andrew Kreshik representing Mayor Patrick Madden, City of Troy.
Chris Wallen representing Mayor Gary McCarthy, City of Schenectady.
Joe Berry representing Mayor Keeler, City of Cohost.
Bill Barrett, Supervisor Clifton Park, Board of Supervisors, Saratoga County.
Bill Serafino, Thruway Authority, Home Division Director.
Steve Feeney representing Anthony Jazenzi, Schenectady County Legislature.
Rory Flumen, Schenectady County Manager.
Mike Butler, City of Mechanicsville.
Patrick Jordan, Port of Albany.
Paige Freeman, City of Saratoga Springs, proxy for Mayor Von Kim.
Flip around that way.
Okay, yeah, I'm Jeanette Dunn, also proxy for Von Kim.
Chris Bauer, Transportation Council staff.
Good afternoon, Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council.
Jacob Beeman, Transportation Council. Bob Rice, New York DOT.
That's Von's transportation.
And listening in online, we have Stephen Maples from the council, Jen Spranis from the Transportation Council, George Penn from Albany County, Dana Shermer from the Federal Transit Administration, Carrie Ann Miller from DOT, Caitlin O'Brien, and I apologize, I don't know your affiliation, you can put that in the chat if you don't mind. Joe Lasavita, City of Waterville, Rima Stramia from the Transportation Council, Linda Vandahaya from Rensselaer County, Peter Comenzo from Town of Rotterdam, Sean McGuire from Town of Colony, and Teresa LaSalle from the Transportation Council.
Great, did we miss anybody? I think so. So we'll stay out of order here, privilege of the floor, just to keep Sandy guessing. Privilege of the floor, I don't think anyone sent it to me, I don't think there's anyone from the general public here or online. So that we got that one underway. We have some 2 or 3 items under administration that Sandy will take care of. You want to handle those 2?
Yep, real quick, on our website, under the policy board materials, we posted our performance and expenditure report. In the interest of time, I won't go through it in detail, but to summarize it, basically, it represents the last 6 months of work here. We have been focusing on getting our 6 to 10 linkage studies moving forward. We're also spending a lot of time building our core products, the congestion management process and the coordinated plan, both of which are on your agenda today. And we spent a lot of time preparing for the upcoming Vision Zero Safety Action Plan process that will begin next year. But if you want to see the work we do and learn more about us, that catalogs everything we've done in the last 6 months. The second item is the meeting schedule for next year. I did just want to briefly point out that the thing, I apologize. The sharing is a little tricky. Per usual, we have our planning committee meetings. The deadline for tip amendment requests for those of you who have planning committee members is December 20th because of the holiday season. I just wanted to point it out. It's a little earlier than normal. But our upcoming policy board meetings are scheduled for March 7th, June 6th, September 5th, and December 5th. I will stop there on those items.
Also, like within a day every year, right?
They're always first Thursday of the month.
Any questions about that? Helpful information, download it, put it in your calendar or whatever is necessary. But if you have people come to the planning committee, that's sort of what the action is. I'm sure they are aware of those things. Okay. Phil, you got a presentation for us. What's going on at the Thruway?
Yeah, I guess I'd say thanks for the opportunity for getting volunteered, I guess. Just, yeah, I got a bunch of slides here. Let's just kind of talk about what's going on at the Thruway, our plan going forward. For anybody who doesn't know, go to slide 2, Sandy, if you will.
Sure.
Albany Division, we cover from New Paltz to just west of Canajoharie, including the entire Berkshire Spur. Consists of 15 interchanges, 5 maintenance sections, 6 service areas, which are under construction right at the moment, all owned by Applegate, and then 2 welcome centers. And because it's snow and ice, considering this snowing outside right now, this was supposed to be rain. We have over 140 maintenance staff and approximately 100 pieces of equipment dedicated to snow and ice operations just for the Albany corridor. And it is broken up into 4 divisions: New York, Buffalo, Syracuse, and Albany. Next slide, please, Mike. Yeah. One more, please. Okay. I'm sure most people in this room know, but if you don't, we are a user fee supported highway. We don't take any state, local or dedicated, funds. So if you don't ride the road, you don't pay for the road. That's a good thing for a lot of folks in New York, considering 60% or 40% of our revenue comes from outside the state. Toll dollars, what do you get for your toll on the thruway? It pays for all of our infrastructure projects, that are not capitalized. All of our equipment, salaries, dedicated state police, with True T. But also we have a dedicated statewide thruway operations center that dispatches emergency services to stranded motorists, accidents, whatever the case may be, 24/7, 365. That's like right here out of Albany, and we communicate from New York to Buffalo, the only agency in the state that can do that. We also have 24-hour response and maintenance forces, dedicated traffic safety personnel to handle traffic management. We have agreements with local toll garages that are authorized for specific locations on the thruway that are dedicated to just us. They have to meet a certain criteria and they have to be responsive within 30 minutes. So if you break down the highway, on the thruway anyways, and you call for a tow truck, you call 911, it goes to our dispatch center, and we will dispatch a tow truck that has to be at your location within 30 minutes of them receiving the phone call. Just to keep people safe on the highway and get them off as quickly as possible. We also have one of the lowest fatality rates in the country. For 2022, our fatality rate was 0.16. That is per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Just for comparison, the national average was 1.3. So pretty good record. Next slide, please. Just to talk about our commitment to the infrastructure, our current 5-year capital plan has an investment of 2.4 million over the next 5 years statewide. It gives us an opportunity to work on about half of our roadway surface for projects and address 90 of our 817 bridges system wide. Next slide. So for, capital program for the Albany division, I'll highlight some of the key pieces here. 274 million for the division. Like I say, that's from New Paltz to Canada, including the entire Berkshire Spur. It's roughly an investment of about 114 million in pavement projects, 73 projects that are local, and you'll see that in the next couple of slides. And then we have $35 million on the capital 10 as phase 2 of that project. So these next 5 slides, you're going to see, I just highlighted in yellow the local projects here that are of interest to this group, but it does show everything across the division on where we're spending our money. And you can just kind of flip those, if you want to just look at, this project here, it's we have with Road 7. Local bridge here to 396, repaving 24 to 25. That is coming in 27. If you look at the 24 project, I believe we're doing from 25 to 26. That's gonna be a major project there. We're also going to spend the money to raise the profile or lower the profile of the roadway under the interchange bridge, because since we replaced Old State Road, that's the next bridge going west that gets hit. It was hit multiple times this past year. We had 4 hits in less than 3 weeks. I think I hit in both directions, surprisingly enough. So we're working on trying to increase the vertical clearance there. Next one, again, it's just $5 million on several bridges across 3 counties along with the Lake Florida. So toll adjustments, everybody knows it's coming. I know a lot of folks are not happy about it. I will say, it's the first increase in 14 years. And if you heard me the last time I was in this room, I had people support the toll increase. If anybody can point out anything that hasn't increased in 14 years, I'd love to have a conversation with you. So again, and it's, we look at it as a very modest toll increase. Obviously, the first one goes into effect January of 2024, and the second will go into effect in January of 2027, and it's a 5% increase. It is still some of the lowest toll rates in the country, and I will tell you, if you don't have Easy Pass, I suggest you get one, because that's where your best bang is for your buck. So, I wanted the next slide here just shows you a quick idea of what that looks like as far as the increases go. When I say a modest increase or a minimal increase, it's pennies really. So it is very considered to be very low. This next slide is one that I found the most interesting is look where the Thruway is, even with the toll increases, we are still the third lowest toll road in the country. So, you know, when folks are complaining, about, you know, having to pay a toll, you know, just understand if you take the tolls off the road, everybody in the state has to pay. If we keep the tolls on the road, yes, the people that use the road are the ones that have to pay for the road. So there is a benefit to keeping tolls there. Next is the grant for the Castleton Bridge. There's a big hoopla about that with the presentation down at Castleton. The $21 million that we got, as it states here, did not have any effect on the $13.5 billion that was obligated for New York. So that just, you know, like folks were concerned about that, thinking we're dipping in people's pockets. We're trying not to do that. So just understand. And then the next slide here, we talked about the Castle Bridge again, the investment we're making in it, hopefully extends the life for the next 50 years. Phase one of the project, started in 2022, including 2023, 46.8 million temporary repairs eastbound side to shore that up so we could actually do the reconstruction on the westbound side, plus major superstructure and steel repairs, as well as reconstruction on the westbound side of the bridge. Phase two, which is 35 million, which will start in 2024 for the eastbound side. And hopefully we don't have to touch the bridge for a long time. So that's pretty much it. If you just back up 1 second there, Shane, there is a link on the bottom of that one page, just talks about the list of additional grants that we're actually going to apply for. I've been to Thruway, just completing my 29th year. I think this is only the second time since I've been there that we've actually gotten any kind of federal grant. We had one not that long ago for a drone program, 1.2 million, and then of course it's only one for the gas. So, questions, comments, thoughts?
Pretty easy problem.
I'm good with that.
And just, you know, for context, we invited the Thruway to come, because the Castleton Bridge tip amendment is on the agenda today, but also as we're getting into the development of a regional transportation plan, it's important to understand the plans of all of our regional partners, and obviously Thruway is one. So as you can see, there's a lot of focus on maintenance, which is great. You know, I know it's a huge investment, but thank you for sharing the data.
Oh, you're welcome.
Sandy, even though the Thruway does not use it, are they eligible to come to the table for funding, correct? Okay.
We are, but I don't think we have,
Very rarely,
right? I
and
was gonna say, I mean, maybe some pavement or some pavement striping.
little payment
but-
stuff here or there.
Yeah, I think that
But
might be the last time you see that too.
yeah, the bipartisan infrastructure law just created a structure where there was an opportunity for a big dollar value award to a for a specific project. So it has to show on our tip because it's federal money.
So we have several tip amendments, and coincidentally, the first amendment, so I think you're gonna handle, right, is cast or the second.
No, Bill can
But
discuss
Pete
it.
says Phil.
Yeah.
So clearly, this is for the $21 million. And I haven't done these in forever, so if help me out if I get something, but it was awarded from the federal government to do reconstruction on the eastbound side of the Castle Bridge. As you saw in that presentation, we've concluded the westbound side with all $3 We heard there was a potential for a grant for the eastbound side and took advantage of that and was lucky to get that. So yeah, moving forward, I mean, I don't think the rest of it is all local funds from the Thruway side of the house, as far as I understand. Anything else?
Nope, basically, you know, this is putting this project on the tip and the $21 million award toward the bigger project that the Thruway is doing. That's the action today.
Pretty straightforward, you know, no money's moving around from one source to the
This
other.
is new money, so it's a
New
good
money.
thing.
Pretty easy.
It's a good thing.
We'll call for a vote on this one.
I'll move
Mr. Jordan, second.
I'll second.
it. All right.
That's what kind of competition. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Any questions? You missed something? I get that just many people.
Yes, there are people listening.
All right, we have 3 or 4 more. Cindy, you want to take these?
Sure, Town of Rotterdam, Peter Comenzo, you're listening in. Do you want to speak to the Route 5 project? Route 5 asset project?
Hi, Sandy, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Yeah, just briefly, I know we talked about this at the planning committee meeting, but this is a project down in Rotterdam Junction, Route 5S. During the design phase of it, we ran into an issue with the drainage being in conflict with the sidewalk and bike head project. So after discussions with our engineer, we looks like we need a little bit more money to get through this process. In finding the additional information on the design, we also looked at the water line, which the town of Rotterdam has, which is in close proximity to all this work that's going on, and it's a pretty fragile pipe. It's a transite asbestos pipe. So the town's going to look to replace that. Those monies are going to come from the town, and it's estimated at 1.2 to 1.7 million. So we're going to replace the water line, fix and replace the drainage for in the DOT right away there, and complete the project. So we're pretty far along in the process, and we're moving forward, hoping to get under construction shortly.
Thanks, Peter. Any questions on that? Yeah, pretty straightforward. Oh. All those in favor? Second?
I'll second.
Stephen.
I think Chris beat it out. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next three, I think, are all, DOT projects. Those.
Sure, the next one is, state culvert replacement multi-site project. That is our cross program, the culvert resiliency and state system program. And we want to add some money to that for the, culvert work. This is the projects that are state funded and it doesn't affect the Transportation Council planning targets. This was $4.49 million.
I'll do one at a time, I guess. Motion on this one.
Motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Bill? Tom? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous to me. I don't mind trying to roll, don't bridge.
The next one is Route 9W over CSX Railroad, and it's a bridge replacement project. Here we're looking for an increase of $8.45 million, and that's primarily due to meeting the railroad clearance requirements. We've had some changes in the design because of that. It's driven the price up.
That's your one.
Yeah.
Like, the other piece of this is the offset. We're deferring one of the maintenance projects for the film. It's the balance the main.
How we get $8 million?
I'll move. Why are we showing the second bill? 595, is there something that we're looking at with
That's
595?
the offset project. So A598 is the.
Yeah, so construction is getting moved out into, the fifth year of the.
Oh, the years are getting moved. I
Yep.
was looking at dollars.
The increase.
This is the change.
Yeah, so it's basically just a fiscal constraint.
We have a motion from Pat, I believe.
Second.
Bill?
Second, Bill. Split it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thanks. One more line.
Okay, the next one, it's a local project, Stop 13 Road over Wineskittle, bridge repair. And that's adding $232,000 to cover price escalation accounted during construction.
Yep. We needed to bring this to policy because it's a different point source.
Right.
Chris has moved it.
Second.
Seconded. Beat Tom. All those in favor? All right, that's the hard one, believe it or not. Sandy's got about 5 or 6.
Yes, we have a couple of things to go through. We're gonna start with the congestion management process, which is on the table today for adoption, and I'm gonna have Andrew Tracy a short briefing on the document and next steps. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is an update on our congestion management process. We presented the draft congestion management process at the last two planning committee meetings, and I'd like to show you the final product now. First, what is the congestion management process? This is a required planning process for MPOs of our size. Federal Highway regards it as one of the core transportation planning products that MPOs need to produce. Very simply, the CMP, congestion management process, is a systematic approach to managing congestion using accurate and up-to-date system performance data to identify congestion problems and implement congestion management strategies. So very simply, we take a look at the data, we identify congested locations, we assess the appropriate strategies, and recommend what we feel are the right congestion management treatments for each facility. And then all of this flows into our programming and implementation process. If you flip to the next slide, we can see how the congestion management process is linked to our other major planning products for the federal regulations. So the congestion management process, I'll show you some of the performance measures that we developed in a minute here, but the performance measures and the strategies that we identify are adopted in our long-range Metropolitan plan. In turn, the vision and goals developed in that long-range plan need to be used by the congestion management process. So they're all linked together. And the Transportation Improvement Program, which provides funding for all of our projects, that's the main implementation for both the long-range plan and for the congestion management process as well. So on the next slide, we can see the 8 steps that we followed for the congestion management process. I won't go through all of these today. Please visit our website. We have a great report. You can take a look through and see any of these steps in more detail. The CMP it's cyclical, it's ongoing, it's very data-driven. Today, I'm going to focus on 2 of the steps. We're going to take a little bit more of a detailed look at the congestion problems and needs we identified in the region, as well as the congestion management strategies that we feel are appropriate for the region. So if you click through to the next slide, we skip right to step 5 here, identifying congestion problems and needs. So in the report, we used 5 different means to identify congestion needs. We started by taking a look at the data. We have excellent travel time data for most roads in the region dating back to 2016. So for all of these roads, we calculated the excessive delay and the travel time reliability. So 2 different ways of looking at congested locations. We also did pretty robust stakeholder outreach. We met with DOT, with CDTA. We met with our Operations and Safety Advisory Committee, and we received written comments from many different local public agencies as well. So thank you very much for writing in comments. We had overwhelming public response from our 2 rounds of public input as well. In the summer, before we wrote the report, we did our first round of public involvement, and we had a survey that allowed users to put pins on the map and write comments about traffic or safety concerns at any location they wish. So that was done to try to crowdsource, public concerns about congestion. And then in the fall, after the draft report was written, we did our second round of public input and asked the public about the report itself and the strategies that we're proposing. So between these 2 rounds of public input, we received over 700 comments. So very big response from the public on this. We also looked at traffic forecasts to try to identify roadways that will become more congested in the future as the region grows. And also we overlaid this data on top of our environmental justice areas. These were identified in our Title VI Environmental Justice Report, which we published back in January. And what we found is that most congested locations in our region also fall into EJ areas. So if you click to the next slide, I'll show you two of those steps we just identified. Pictured here on the left is a map of the total excessive delay for each road segment in the region. If you go to our website, there's a link you can click on to see a full screen interactive map, so you can zoom in anywhere you wish. It's much easier to see online than it is here on the slide. But you can see the roadways in red are those with the most delay for travelers. And some of the red roads on the map there will be very familiar. You can see Hoosick Street and Hoosick Road there. Just to the north, that's Route 146 and Route 9 in Clifton Park. Many of the red roads in Albany and Schenectady, that includes many portions of Central Ave and Wolf Road and similar places. The map on the right is the density map of all the comments that we received during the public input. We made this density map, and what we found is that places that the public regard as locations of traffic or safety concern actually matched very well with what the data said. So this is very encouraging, and these two maps and many of the other data sources we use are discussed in more detail in the report. So moving on to step 6. In the report, we identify 8 categories of congestion management strategies. The first category, ITS, that's Intelligent Transportation Systems. TSM&O, Transportation Systems Management and Operations. These two terms broadly refer to leveraging technology to make roadways safer and flow more efficiently. We also identified strategies relating to transportation demand management. These are strategies that help take cars off the road, everything from work to home policy, work from home policies to carpooling policies, everything in between. Public transit and bicycle and pedestrian strategies, obviously improving alternative modes can help shift cars off the road as well. Access management refers to a group of strategies to reduce driveway density and side street density and other things that will improve both safety and traffic flow on the region's signalized highways. Land use, obviously, there's a very strong connection between land use and traffic. Land use drives traffic, so we can adopt certain land use policies to try to limit the traffic growth on our congested roadways. We also identified parking management strategies and roadway capacity strategies as well. And in that roadway capacity category, we focus mainly on the more cost-effective capacity projects, such as adding turning lanes or lengthening turning lanes where needed on signalized roadways, short spot widenings, parcel connections, parallel service and access roads, things of that nature. These are the more cost-effective strategies that we want to focus on. So again, these are discussed in more detail in the full reports. On the next slide, this is the last slide. Please visit our website to see the full report. You can also view the online map of congestion data while you're there. If adopted, we're going to continue the congestion management process as an ongoing planning process. I'd like to do an annual refresh of all of our congestion data so we can see how congestion continues to shift around the region. We are going to develop strategy recommendations specific to each roadway facility. That'll be part of the ongoing process as well. And ongoing stakeholder collaboration. This is very important. We want to work with the roadway owners to identify what the right treatments are for the facilities that they operate. The CMP will also be integrated into our upcoming tip update. We want to make sure that the cost-effective strategies identified in the CMP have a path to implementation through our transportation improvement program. And it will also be the strategies and performance measures identified here. Those will be adopted in our next long-range Metropolitan Plan update as well. So that's all from me. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
How does congestion in our region compare with other peer regions?
Most of the, peer regions elsewhere in New York, I think our region in Buffalo were the highest in terms of the high-level performance measures outside, New York City and Long Island, of course. We received a lot of comments from the public review process that I thought were very reasonable. A lot of comments were written by people who have lived in other regions before, and they were very level-headed, and they said, I understand that traffic is worse in much larger metropolitan areas or places like Long Island or North Jersey. And traffic around here really isn't too bad, but there are some spots around here that are very bad and it could use some attention. And I think those comments, I think were the most reasonable, and we got quite a few of those in the public input process.
Other questions?
Yes.
So along those lines of public comment, you mentioned this was a cyclical process. How does the volume of public input for 2023 compare to other years?
This was the first time we did a dedicated public outreach for the CMP. In the past, our congestion management process was one piece of our long-range plan. It was one of the white papers that was included in that plan. So this year, we've decided to spin it out as its own standalone planning process to give it a little more attention.
Thanks.
Yes.
A follow-up question. How did you engage the public? Do you
So-
get good results?
Oh,
How did you generate that?
I mean, I think it's the topic that drove the results. Everyone loves complaining about traffic. It's everyone's favorite pastime, small talk. For the first round, we made an online survey with ArcMaps Survey 123. And so users had an interactive map, and on their phone or their computer, they could put pins on the map and write comments. And we used our social media. I know that CDTA promoted the survey as well. And many of our local partners promoted it as well through their websites and their social media. I got a lot of traction from that. In the second round of public input, the Times Union wrote an article, and we got over 100 responses right after that article was published. But mainly it was the social media and websites of all of our partner agencies.
And we do want to thank all of you who did post it, because I know many of you here in the room, your community or organization did forward it along. We have zip code data that kind of can point to when those bumps happened, what's based on who was getting the information. So it's new staff, new tools. And we're really starting to evolve into using a lot more technology in our outreach.
Just one more question.
Sure.
The CDTA, did you advertise it on your bus shelters, on the buses?
No, we use our social media website, Twitter.
So can you tell a respondent who's a public transportation user versus someone who drives their own?
We didn't ask that question specifically, but many of the questions they were all multimodal, and so people would write, as a pedestrian, I feel very unsafe crossing Central Ave. Or they would say, as a transit rider, I'm often late to work because of this road. And I'll add that CDTA also provided written comments from their operators, which was very helpful. The boots on the ground, so to speak, they know which roadways are problematic. They can hold up the transit route. So that was very helpful as well.
Make it proceed.
The guys and gals,
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. So we need action.
We need action to approve this, yeah.
So motion.
Jill?
All in favor?
Aye.
I encourage you to check the study out. You'll be engaged. Your eyebrow will go up at this one plus.
A lot of interesting things.
Yeah. Thank you. Keep going, Sandy.
All right, perfect, thank you. So the next item relates to our coordinated human yeah, this is a mouthful, so I even struggled with this. Coordinated public transit, human services, transportation plan. Unfortunately, Carrie Ward is on vacation today, so I'm pitch hitting just a little bit to share what this is, but briefly, this is one of our required plans that is developed locally in consultation with folks that represent the transportation needs of folks with disabilities, older adults, and people with low incomes. It really gets into the service gaps and the barriers to providing this sort of transportation and the needs for coordination. Because there's lots of little public transit service providers out there, senior centers, what have you, all running different services. All of it is expensive, drivers are short, and it's challenging to provide these services. So that's the story with what the purpose of this plan is. It's built with input from those human service agencies, from transportation providers, And then obviously we've gone to the public, we've gone straight to senior centers or congregate settings to get surveys filled out and responses from people who could share their stories about their experience using some of these services. The plan includes and identifies strategies for meeting these local needs, prioritizes services and for funding and implementation. And as I said earlier, it's a requirement because a lot of the projects specifically identified in this plan are used to support proposals for the Section 5310 program, which is the Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities program. So what are those 5310 priorities identified in the plan? A lot of it comes back to shared resources and pooled funding, right? So pooling funding and resources to do simple things like vehicle washing and purchasing gas. Just as we all know, the larger of a pool of people you have working together to get a gas rate, the better the gas rate, right? So that's the premise behind that. Same thing with the insurance, providing driver mechanic training, having shared dispatch call centers and other sources for providing the services, information sharing, even the travel mobility training, just how to use these services is something that's required for shared coordination, and then coordinating emergency management. So these are sort of the broad categories of the types of principles that we hope applicants will consider when providing applications for the 5310 program. And some additional things that are included in the plan as strategies or actions. We do intend to host a workshop in 2024 for providers of human services transportation to further discuss this important topic and find more ways to network and coordinate services. As a MPO, we're still working with our local governments to complete ADA transition plans and do that cataloging of ADA related facilities and communities. We're looking for ways we can incentivize inclusion of accessible features in our TIP projects. So when you're thinking about your TIP projects, are you noting that you should be doing your sidewalk work and these other things, curb ramps, etc. We want to have conversations in the region about improving where we're siting facilities, particularly if you think of where a lot of our senior facilities are being sited right now. They're often in places where you're not able to serve well with transit or other types of transportation. So how do we navigate the land use piece of this? And best practices for public charging for electronic mobility devices. We talk a lot about electric charging for cars and for bicycles, but we forget sometimes that people with electric wheelchairs also need a place to charge. So how do we get that into the conversation? So that is a very simple summary of what is in the coordinating plan. It's a very long document with a lot of detailed demographic information about the region. So I encourage you to look at it, but the underlying theme is this document really focuses on the needs of the folks that may be amongst our most vulnerable.
Could you just explain who's eligible for 5310 funding?
So my understanding is anybody who provides a public transit, so better way to say human service function like Bethlehem Senior Services, for example, organizations like that, nonprofit groups are all eligible.
But not us.
Not CDTA.
A lot of that stuff, I'm sure looks familiar. I'm sure CDTAs are, we're not eligible.
Is that Flex Bus, or that somebody else's?
Oh, the Star Circ. The reason the Star Bus was in, or the Flex Bus, I think that was just, I'd have to ask Carrie about that.
Whatever.
No, I just assumed CDTA got money.
That's why I specifically wanted.
Well, the relationship for CDTA really is the STAR system, that may have been a oversight.
5310 for stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'm on this committee. The service agencies do God's work. It is a bizarre way to approach this problem. As a regionalist, I see that. And what compounds the challenges, and the report gets into it, is that we have our 65 and over population across the board is double-digit increases since the past census. That trend is going to continue. What's more, the population 60 and over who are living alone are seeing double-digit increases also. Those increases are significant in the outskirts, in the rural areas, in the areas that are not served by the current transit system. So something we all collectively need to think about.
So just a little bit of information there, since STAR got brought up. STAR is our service for people with disabilities, grows at a rate of about 10% a month. There is also no dedicated funding for that program. That's why I point out 5310 is a funding program for God's work. Percent agree, but there is no funding program for systems like STAR. So, and also, I've been doing this for a long time. I would say my greatest disappointment in my public service career is the lack of coordination of these programs. Town of Bethlehem runs their program, Town of Rotterdam runs their program, Town of Colony runs their program, and they do a great job, but there's little coordination. I mean, frankly, there are more seats than we need, but they're not coordinated, so oftentimes people who need service don't get it, really because not lack of vehicles and lack of drivers, it's lack of coordination. I don't have the answer to it. We've had stops and starts to coordinate these services. But you'd all have to sort of lay your cards on the table and understand what each other's doing. It's, like Mark says, it is a challenge.
Are there any requirements for the service providers to follow this now?
That's the concepts behind the plan is, since we have these broad, I mean, they're broad.
Yeah.
But that's the idea of the later framework for the kind of things that they should be coordinating with, and we use our the renamed advisory committee we have here as a tool to help facilitate those conversations. But hence the need for the workshop and ongoing networking, because
No ramifications though, if they don't.
there's
Holding back funding or.
there's not a hold back, it's just that they won't get access to it. It's, as Carl said, the 5310 program is very limited.
Yeah.
Funding, very limited. As it really is God's work, but it's important work, as Mark pointed out, our demographics is driving the need for this even more. And the land use patterns that are evolving as a result are a challenge.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, electric mobility devices like a wheelchair, or is that funding that would go to a building, a facility? We're not talking about putting that out publicly on the roadways, are we?
I mean, we're talking, there's lots of options now. I mean, we could even piggyback on sort of like the bike share program stations, there's different ways you can implement it. It's just not something that's usually thought about, and we have a lot of folks that do use mobility devices. We've all seen them on the roadway.
Yeah.
It could be done in private world, but
I didn't know if it was like something like in a park, if you wanna, maybe not just sit there, you wanna, I don't know, I'm not familiar with it, but that was an interesting one. It also, off subject, but on subject, it originally read that as electric vehicles when I read it. And then I said that can't be it, but has any municipalities done, like we're working on Craig Street right now, have any municipalities done a public corridor project like that with the charging stations included, and put charging station dedicated parking on a public corridor?
your friend next to you in Cohoes did.
Yeah, we did 3, but we have 2 streetscape projects where we're working directly with Livingston right now. And they're putting them all over the place on their dime.
Is it eligible to be, oh, they're doing it on their dime? Is it eligible cost to do through the program? To run
There's
like-
elements of it, and I think the eligibility criteria is expanding slowly, but it's still a little.
But the application window to apply for NYSDOT and DEC subsidies is open now. And I can pay for 100% of the installation costs.
We did ours through National Grid. Yeah, I just didn't know, so you've been doing it. We haven't done it on any of ours, but Craig Street is just, community project, and it might be something where it would be something that we should look at.
Yeah.
Maybe putting in one.
Talk to you offline about the challenges we have with our pass provider and obviously show the Livingston.
Thank you.
All right, so can we get a motion to approve this study as well?
I'm with the motion.
Second. Lori,
Second.
those in favor? Great. All right, keep going, you're doing well.
All right. The next item relates to federal safety performance measures. Real quick on this, there's 5 safety performance measures that, the MPOs and DOT have to develop targets for. This is a tool that the Congress decided how to gauge the performance of the national transportation system. This is one of the metrics that they're using, which is safety. What you're seeing in this graph for the state as a whole, New York State, the calculation that develops this target is based on a 5-year rolling average of crash data. And as you can see, the categories, number of fatalities, rate of fatalities, number of serious injuries, rates of serious injuries, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries, which of course your bicyclists, your pedestrians, et cetera. And as you can see, you know, we've had reductions in the 5-year time frame for the fatalities, and a little bit, actually, the rest actually increased. This was reduction, sorry. But big increases, as you can see, in the rate of fatalities and the rate of serious injuries. And the reason you're seeing such a larger increase during the time frame is the year of 2020 during COVID. We had a huge increase in serious injuries and fatalities because the roadways were wide open and people were doing unfortunate things on the roadway system. So that blip of data is carried through in the data analysis, which is why the DOT statewide has decided to set a very conservative reduction target, because that bubble of data is still in the mix. So the proposed targets are to reduce all of these categories by 0.5%. And just for comparison purposes, when you tease out this data for our 4-county region, you can see a slightly different picture. We actually decreased fatalities in the same time period by almost 7%. And we almost decreased the number of serious injuries by 5%. But the rate of fatalities and serious injuries did both go up. So, you know, when you tease out, you know, the city of New York and some other parts of the state, you get a little bit of a different picture. But again, what we're proposing today is to support the DOT targets for each measure of the 0.5%. Which I can make one. Any questions?
Just a silly one.
Yep.
Was there ever discussion to hold that year out? Because I mean, mathematically, it's just totally skewed. You have less drivers of either the same
Yeah.
or massive accidents, so you have limited amount of miles traveled, but
Yeah.
even if you have the same amount of accidents,
It was
the
discussed at the
denominators.
federal level, and because it's legislated, they could not take that year out. So it impacted every state, obviously, but some states more than others.
Because it's
I
legislative.
know the answer is, even though it is, you could, but they decided not to.
Yeah. So one of those data anomalies that give a couple more years,
Yeah, it'll be
it'll
out.
filter
They
out.
can't figure
It's,
out how
it's,
to-
it's just like when the Schoharie limousine crash happened,
Exactly.
because when you looked at the statewide data, that county would always pop up, and it's because of such a severe loss of life in one incident.
I didn't know, but similar, I read an article about after the Niagara Falls vehicle crash, the 200-mile-an-hour family. Someone wrote an opinion article about why do cars go so fast? You know, why have a car that can go 200 miles an hour? And it didn't really have a conclusion, but it did say that Volvo, which prides itself on safety, said all their cars now have a top speed of only 115, and they got killed. Like everybody was like, I can't believe you're limiting it. And they're like, they limited it to 115.
Yeah.
And even then the consumers were like, that's too slow. And it's like, who's driving 115? Well, it was an interesting. But it's just, an interesting thing for safety is that you have a car that can go that fast and you're putting it on a public road.
So before we try to alter society, we get a motion. This one. Well, please. Thank you, Tom. Second? A second. Pat, since you asked the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Aye.
Sandy?
I just wanted to point out in the chat, just for the record, that there currently is some funding through the Department of Health for installing electric chargers for mobility devices. Carrie Ward is interested in hearing from folks about where to site chargers. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to Carrie or through me. And also Joe Lasavita noted, we cited 12 overall throughout 3 locations, Hudson Shores Park, the Recreational Dome, and our Historical Society. We did not consider roadway as parking as critical on major road network.
And just get a clarification on what is necessary to charge a wheelchair or a device, because in our parks, we tend to have people just going up to the poles and plugging in.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the mobility device. In some cases, it may be just a standardized regular old plug, but in other cases, they may not, and it may need some adaptive. But more importantly, I think it's just the availability of it and making that known to folks that they're available where they are available. A lot of places don't have that.
They're all available at your new ones, right? Carnival, you've got every type of plug you can think of.
And they're there.
Yep. Okay. Move on to the next one.
Bridge, New York.
Bridge, New York. So, you may recall a year ago, we had a Bridge New York 2022. This is Bridge New York 2023. In which, there are federal funds being made available for local bridge projects. So the only eligible sponsors for these funds, are folks that are at a county, a city, town, or village. The DOT and the sort of state regional agencies are not eligible for these funds. Also, bridges that are bike ped only are not eligible for these funds. They're strongly encouraging in this year's program to get more what they term off-system bridges funded through this program, meaning those that are not on the federal aid system. So these are really locally owned bridges. The funding available for our 4-county area totals to about 16 million, and these are targets by county. So for Albany County, there's 2.8 million. For Rensselaer County, there's a little over 7.8 million. Saratoga County, a little bit, about 3.8 million, which is also shared with our friends up in Monroe and South Glens Falls. And in Schenectady County, about 1.7 million. They're unlike last year, there's no set aside of funds or reserve of funds for balancing out the program. So these numbers are what they are. Don't submit, if you're in Albany County, you have a $3 million bridge, you won't get the additional balance through any other source. So these are sort of pretty firm targets. As I said, about 60 to 75% of the bridges to be funded in the program are desired to be off system. Some things that have changed for this program this time around. We added an evaluation criteria that considers project delivery in terms of, has your community started any design works, hired a consultant that's assigning points for project delivery. We made some adjustments on the eligibility criteria as I just reviewed. The plan is that the applications will be due January 12th. We're going to issue the solicitation immediately upon leaving this room to get this in the hands of the local bridge owners. The application is pretty simple. Hopefully, won't be a burden, given I know that there's other grant applications like TAP and CAPSMEC going on out there. But if you have any questions about any of it, let us know. The other evaluation criteria remain unchanged from last time around, focusing on facility importance, condition, and we've added in this project delivery category. We also provided in some of the guidance materials, some additional information on how our regional travel demand model fits into the evaluation process. So that's a little more clear. And then in terms of the timeline, as I said, the submission deadlines are January 12th. We'll bring scores to the planning committee for review at the February meeting. We'll have a public review process in the month of February with policy board review and approval of the projects at the March meeting. So that is the very brief. So this action today is really giving us the go ahead to issue this solicitation and get the process started.
Great. What's the reason for Rensselaer having such a large?
So the targets are based on,
They don't maintain their bridges.
Their Andrew doesn't want me out of question, no one.
it is a factor, is the condition of.
Conditions, okay. Not number.
Not the number of bridges.
Or size.
Or size.
It's actually a combination.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. Those factors are included, yeah.
For county and town roads, city streets,
County.
any local road.
Count any locally owned bridge, not owned by state DOT or any other entity.
Culvert, Sandy, is there?
There's a separate culvert program that maybe DOT can discuss.
Go
ahead, Bob.
Just like we did last time, it's a little bit of nuance. It's really not a solicitation, then it's a call for projects. Is a little bit different because ultimately this rolls into our core program, unlike TAP CMAC, but it's more a budgeting thing. So we are doing, there is both a Bridge New York and a Culver New York program. The our friends in Glens Falls, AGFTC are doing it for their 2 counties. DOT is doing it for Essex and Greene County here, and that'll comprise the 8 counties, and we've got targets for each of those. Very importantly, that we wanted to mirror in each of the MPO areas, that it mirrors traditional program development process, the same criteria and stuff. So that's with cooperation with the council. This is the method. On the culvert side, because they're 100% state funded, it is just a singular call for projects that's already been out there. Hopefully, folks in the community or yourselves have seen it. Here, the applications are due in, I think it's the 19th of January, and they're 100% state funded. And through, I'm like, you got the number, right? 16 million,
14.9.
14.9, yeah, that we have for 8 counties for culverts. So those come to our shop as opposed to the federal aid, the bridge projects in the 4 counties will come here.
So the bottom line is because the county targets are sort of dedicated to the county of record, you can see the scale of what's available. So as you think about your applications and bridges, there's a cap of $5 million per bridge. So in the Rensselaer County example, we would have that ceiling. That would be the maximum request for a single bridge, but we're certainly looking for proposals from a range of bridge owners.
Okay, more on bridges, culverts. A motion to,
Make a motion.
All right, second, right, Mark? All's in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, Metropolitan Transportation Plan in motion.
Yes.
Plan to 2050.
So briefly, yes, I didn't want to take a lot of time up today because I knew the agenda was long, but we are starting the update of our regional transportation plan. At our next meeting, we'll be bringing some detailed information to the group for approval as we move forward on developing the plan. But if we did want to share that we've talked about rebranding as we've done with many things here. It's just time to refresh some things and start using some new language. We're proposing that our theme or our sort of branding for the long range plan, it's no longer, you're never going to hear the words new visions out of me again. Because we've been talking about new visions since I started here 25 years ago. I look out my window, it looks pretty much the same as it did 25 years ago. Just kidding. But instead, we're going to frame it as in motion, the plan to 2050. Because, you know, the nature of our business being transportation folks, we thought this was a better theme for our long range plan. So just briefly where we're at over this last few months, we've been doing a lot of data collection and starting to build our existing conditions inventory. We plan to begin public engagement starting, you know, this month, running through June, to share some things that we've learned, get more feedback on sort of the existing conditions in the region. And then we're going to start working on sort of imagining the future. What are those future scenarios? What does the future of our transportation system look like? And that'll be in the bulk of 2024 that work is undertaken. Come next fall and winter, we'll be really coming back to you folks as the decision makers to really start putting policy in place for the plan. And then in the first part of 2025, really beginning in April, and over that summer in 2025, we'll be sharing the draft plan with the public for review. And then ultimately this group will be adopting the plan in September. And so, you know, just
Sandy, would
as
you
a
mind sharing that?
Oh, I'm already done. It's available on our website. What I will share though is the website that is in development that shares our StoryMap that was built with the assistance of the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. I'm just going to share the screen with that. Okay, so you should be seeing sort of the intro and entry page to what is called In Motion Capital Region Trends and Forecasts. A story map, in simple terms, is just a tool that we use to catalog data and display it using interactive platforms. So when you scroll through the different categories of information here, you'll get some facts and figures about the region. You'll see some images, some graphics, displaying maybe some economic data and some other things, but essentially this is a tool that we hope to use to help make some of this otherwise dry data a little more interesting and a little more easy for folks to digest rather than a 100-page document that most of us, find hard to read. So the story map is still in development. We're putting some of the finishing touches on it as we speak. And we plan on making this available publicly in the next few weeks, if not by the end of the calendar year. But I think it's gonna be a good resource for the plan and for the public to refer to as we think about, all things related to transportation and our existing trends. The other interesting thing about the story map is that we do have a sort of an intro thought piece of what's next. And what this synthesis of information is telling us about the region. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that when it's available. And there also will be a survey tool attached to the map so that we can get folks feedback on the information that's been presented. So I didn't want to take too much time to go through all the detail of it. There's a lot in here, trust me. But we'll be making this publicly available once these finishing touches are made on the story map. And like I said, we'll be coming back to you folks in the first part of 2024 with the detailed plan of how we're going to build the new long range plan, but this will be a significant effort for our staff over this next 18-month or so period, along with our evolving local road safety action plan. Now it's called the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan project. Which is about to launch in the first part of 2024. And as you all know, we'll be doing a tip update the latter part of 2024. So we're gonna be busy here as a group. In 2024, we'll be bringing a lot to the table for discussion and for comments. But these are our foundational documents that really will drive future policy and investment in the transportation system for the foreseeable future. So we hope to have your engagement, continued support. And if you have any questions when this launches publicly, we're happy to take them and evolve it. And Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. And thanks to Mark's team, Maddie in particular, Rebecca and Jen here, for all their efforts in constructing what is a really good resource, I believe. And that's that.
Any questions on that? Good stuff. Great, all right, we got through the hard part. Status of regional transportation planning initiatives. Anything else for the council?
I think that's it for now. I think I've said enough.
So the Regional Planning Commission was awarded a $1 million grant from the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Program to do climate action planning in the Capital District and new greenhouse gas inventory for the region. Since August, we've been working with a variety of stakeholders to help to work on a priority climate action plan, which is classic federal government due March 1st. And so we'll be continuing to work with stakeholders to carve out what this region will be focusing on to benefit, to get the biggest benefit from this program as possible. There's also implementation funding. So we'll be working with partners to look at different strategies where it can make an impact. We will be shortly releasing an RFP to do an open access broadband network feasibility study. So an open access network is middle mile fiber backbone infrastructure that is publicly owned. The word open means that any internet service provider can use it. The New York State's goal for connectivity for libraries, schools, hospitals, organizations like this is symmetrical gigabit speed. So that's 1 gigabit up, 1 gigabit down, and you need fiber to do that. So the idea of this feasibility study is to figure out a way to connect these institutions together with this backbone and then reach to the farther reaches where they're not adequately served residential so that they can be served with better internet. Oh, by the way, publicly owned infrastructure will also enhance competition among ISPs because they will not be, they won't have essentially what they have now, which is certain monopolies in certain areas because they own the infrastructure. So, increases competition, potentially lowers costs for municipalities and other institutions. So we'll see what the feasibility study tells us about what this would look like for our region. Every other region, I should say, most areas west of here in the state have already developed these networks or are in the process of building them out. So the goal with this would be ready with something that could potentially benefit from the federal BEAD funding that would be available in 2020. That's it.
Questions from Mark? Great. For us at CDK, just a couple things. You may have noticed that we opened our Purple Line DRT along the Washington western border. So we've now completed our goal that we've set about 12 years ago, 40 miles of bus rapid transit service. And it is one of the reasons really for the next subject. Our ridership and customer revenue are up 20% over last year. It was up 15% last year over the year before. We're the only region upstate that, actually, we're the only region in northern New York City where transit ridership has returned to pre-pandemic levels. In fact, we're higher than we were before the pandemic began. Lots of reasons why, lots of questions that we're asking ourselves to make sure we understand exactly what's going on. But I think a lot of it is the regional cooperation that we have here at this table. I think it's somewhat unusual. I've asked Sandy this several times, and this is how all MPOs work, and it's not. The way we operate, I think, is a little different than MPOs because Phil's smiling. He has experience.
Well, I've sat at this one and also Region 8, and even though they're just down the road, totally different. But
So we're tipping our hats to all of you, but it's kind of fun to watch ridership, just keep exceeding what your expectations. I don't really know what the ceiling is. A lot of there's a universal access program as well, where we kind of wholesale ridership and revenue, but it's working and we'll keep doing it. There's some plans to change some things that make it even more attractive to businesses. And we just signed on St. Peter's Healthcare Partners after years of arm wrestling with that. But that will take ridership to a whole nother level. The BRTs are special in themselves. And I've noticed Senator Schumer came and he's been an advocate for us in Washington. He came and basically spoke long terms about it. So it's all good, at least until Christmas. Mike.
Sure, couple project announcements. That Water Street over D&H Railroad Bridge, that letting has been moved to March 14th. Still working to secure a rail agreement for that project. Route 378 over the Hudson River Bridge painting project, that's going to be let on January 11th, 2024. Study announcements, the I-787 reimagined I-787 study, initial concept development and traffic modeling are underway by the consultant team, and the stakeholder meetings continue. There's been quite a few of those, but those are still ongoing. For the Route 378 Pell study, we had a final public meeting on October 26th with generally positive feedback. That was over at Hudson Valley Community College. And the draft final report is on the NYSDOT website for comment. And then just a couple personnel announcements. Our Chief of Staff, Jan McLaughlin, she has just retired. Effective last week was her last week in the office. And Assistant Commissioner George Paralimos from our Long Island region has come up to be the new Chief of Staff. And he's already showing his face and he's in the office now. So we're welcoming him. And we have a new regional traffic engineer in the Capital Region, Mike Fenley, who has replaced Mark Piscadlo, who retired in September. That's it.
Pat, farm report.
Just looking at our numbers are holding pretty steady with our tonnage, ships, longshore hours, which is how we kind of determine if our maritime is working well or not. So down a little bit from last year, but last year was a really good year. I think we're at right 2021, 2022 levels right now.
if you're at the port last week, we actually have a couple in right now. We had 3 or 4 ships in a week. 3 ships at the same time, which is very unusual for any ports on the Hudson north of New York City. So if you work down there, it really looked like a very working port, which we like to see. They're on the Rensselaer side and the Albany side. Global Oil has been doing a lot of business lately, so there's a lot of activity on the water, which leads to a lot of longshoremen, women activity. We have an old commodity that's sort of reverse trends. Cargill is one of our anchor tenants, a grain facility that used to be mostly outbound grain that would come in from the Midwest, so they do a lot of train movement. Just this year, they completely switched, and now it's an inbound facility, and we are seeing basically like a ship every 2 or 3 weeks instead of a ship every 2 or 3 months. So it's a big deal for their workforce, and it'll make our numbers in the next few years look even better. So I'll keep it short. Thanks.
So anything else from the Thruway?
No, I think that covered everything, yeah.
Okay. Any questions for anybody?
Quick one for Pat. I won't talk about the anchoring. The second one is, that was a red herring. You're no longer Port of New York, right? You're a separate entity now? We've always been. I know, but the Coast Guard is changing that designation? No. Yeah, something on an anchoring was just where they're considering, I think, where they just draw lines on how they do things, but no change. Okay. And we're still under the Coast Guard of Capital New York is still. Okay. So it's all the way up from the city? Yeah, so those, icebreakers, cutters will still all be coming to us. Yeah, thanks. I don't know why they changed that designation line, other than probably trying to get around the anchoring. For case that they pushed and the judge finally listened instead of